Hey guys, I just want to show you guys this new project I've been working on. It's called Frantic Search. What it is a deck builder for Magic the Gathering Commander. Currently it only works with Commander, and I have no intentions on expanding it out to anything else. But I want to show you guys kind of how it works and what you need to do to use it. Um, so I'm going to start off by just going ahead and creating a new deck. For now, I'm going to skip and continue without a pool. We can revisit that later on exactly what that does. And I'm just going to pick a commander. Let us pick Omnath. Focus of Rage. That works. So after selecting him, it'll pull me over into archetypes here, and I can pick out what archetype I want. I can exclude the archetype if I would like, and that will try to ignore it and push it out of the deck. So if there's some commanders that might be common with multiple archetypes, but usually you only want to pick one, you can exclude those out so it doesn't get confused. You can also add your own archetypes, pulling from EDH rec, or if you know the Scryfall tags, you can type them in there. This will also show you some of the other common ones. It'll just pick the top three, and it'll put the primary one primary, and that'll be the most popular one there. You can also reorder these like this. And for this, I guess, suppose I want to put landfall at number one. Moving on to the actual deck itself, we have a couple different things here we can do. So we have the archetype preset. What this is different decks will build different ways depending on whether they're aggro, mid-range, control combo, that kind of thing. We can also go here and just apply the EDH rec defaults for Omnath. We'll go ahead and do that. Here we can also set a budget. Let's set a budget of $800. You can also include in here whether or not you want combos. We'll leave that as neutral. Same thing with game changers. You can limit them, boost them, or exclude them. We'll just set limit. Under advanced options here, we have a couple different things here we can do. We can do card type balance. This mostly came into effect where people were building, let's say, artifact heavy decks, or creature heavy decks, and the deck builder wasn't putting them in there. So it's like I have a creature deck. All the cards that are here are good, except it's just missing all the creatures. So here you can go in and set whether or not you want to do that. For Omnath here, I don't think it's hyper important. So we'll just do EDH rec types, and that'll also again do the average EDH rec here. Whenever we clicked on this apply EDH rules earlier, it also set our tuning to the average CMC for Omnath. So we can change that here, and this isn't like a hard cap. It'll just try to build towards that. Along here with build style, I can move towards higher synergy or towards staples. Basically what that's saying is like, hey, Source of Plowshare is a really good card for white, but there might be something that it costs one more mana, but it synergizes better with whatever you're trying to do. So it'll weigh out those options. This is basically just a slider to say, hey, I want high synergy. For this, sure, let's do high synergy. Land strictness here, most of the time I would just leave it on strict. But basically this is more about, do you want tap lands? Do you want non-basics? If you're trying to go for like a cheap deck with a lot of colors, it may be worth moving it down to more relaxed so you can get a lot more duels in there. Just know it's going to be slower. Moving over here to budget and collection. If you were to include a pool, you could toggle here, prefer cards I own. I'll get into not kind of show what pools are later. You can also put in max card. You can also put in price sensitivity. Strongly prefer cheap means that most of the cards are probably going to be a little bit cheaper. If you were to go to ignore price, then you might get some cards, like one or two cards that are super duper expensive, and then that'll take up most of the budget for the deck. So I'd recommend at least leaving this in the middle. It probably couldn't hurt to go more towards the cheap side. Then you also have Scryfall theme tags. I would just always leave this checked. This would also query Scryfall for any relative themes and apply those here. Sometimes I can see instances where you may not want it, so that's why it's an option. Include tutors. I'm going to leave this checked. Sometimes you may not want to include tutors in your deck. If you don't want it to be super, playing the same lines every time, you may want to take that out, so you can do that. Try to include a win con. What this is I have a list of curated cards, and I will basically say, hey, if you're this color, you're in this archetype, then here's a win con card, just to help you close out the game. So something like Crater Hoof, a Thassa's Warcliffe in your blue draw deck, that kind of thing. So I'll go ahead and check that here. Once I'm happy with everything, I can hit ready to build. I'll go here and I will name this, and I will do /demo, and then hit let's brew. This one I'll go ahead and pull together all those synergies and everything like that from EDHREC, Scryfall, and a couple other places, and aggregate all that data. So let's go down the deck list thing first. So we have our mana base here, and what this is doing, it kind of it does its best. So you can see here, we have 23 sources of green, 17 of red. It recommends at least 23 to be able to play Archduke's Charm, which is like one of the more color-specific requirements on turn 3. So it does that, and then it says, hey, you need this many just to probably play Vandal Blast on turn 1. It will recommend some stuff here, even though it just built it and said, it may be worth it to remove a forest instead of that, but it's up to you. But it basically calls it fine there. So moving on, we can look at our cards that I actually picked. So each of these sections can be collapsed if you would like, or you can just leave all of them open. Let's look at this first card here. So we have Fill of the Dead. I can click on it, and it can go over here, and you can see it as a game changer. Here are some relative links on it. Gives you some Oracle text there, and it gives you the total score. So this kind of tell you like why it picked it. So you can like kind of look at different cards and see, like why is this in here. But let's say I don't like Fill the Dead. What can I do? I can hit this X right here, and that will remove this from subsequent builds. And then moving on, like let's say, Cyndaquil. Sure, that's a good card. Command Tower, Reliquary Tower, all these look good. What I would recommend is if you're building this deck for yourself to go through each one of these cards and just kind of say, do I like this? Is this a card that I want in this deck? And go through here and be thinking about, specifics on what is the deck trying to do. This isn't something that's going to build the deck for you. I know that there's a lot of tools out there that are like AI deck assist build. I'm not really a fan of those because I still want to build my decks my way. And this still allows you to do it. It just basically gives you recommendations. So yeah, let's go through here. Like Lowe's Cobra, Timeless Provisional, great. Not really a big fan of Nisa. I still sure Druid class, sure. Alright, so let's say I go through here and I go through all of these cards. You can see it through our win con in right here under core, which is kind of like what our deck's trying to do. And then we have crop rotation, Worldly Tutor, that kind of stuff here. Let's say I go through and I do all that. What do I do now? So you can hit rebuild with changes. It'll go through and it will take out the cards that we removed and then basically rebuild everything from scratch. So it'll lock in all the cards that you locked in, it'll lock those in, it'll remove all the cards you didn't want. And it'll rebalance everything for us. So yeah, what I would do is I would do that a couple times until I get to something that I'm happy with. You can also go over here to alternates. Sometimes the math isn't 100% on what you're trying to pick. Like Command Beacon, that's a pretty good land. So, hey, let's go and include that. It's worth missing out on, one of these cards for having Command Beacon in there. So we'll lock that in. And you can go through here and do the same kind of thing, see if there's any cards that, we may have missed or, like anything that you like. You can also go in here and add a card manually. If I could spell. So we have Thought Vessel right here. Let's go ahead and add that in. And you can see it locked it right there. If it wasn't on the list, it would just add it in. We can hit rebuild. And if we go back to our deck list, you can see under ramp, there's Thought Vessel. Another thing you may need to do is, let's say I have Azusa Lost but Seeking right here in my ramp. but Azusa ramps you, but she needs the card draw to go along with her. So whenever I think of ramp for this deck, let's say I want it to be more going and getting. So for this, what I can do is I can go ahead and move her down to core, and then she won't take up a ramp slot anymore. She'll be moved down to my core section right here. So I can hit rebuild here, and then it'll rebalance that, taking one of those out of there, and then adding another card into ramp. So that's kind of most of what you can do here. Moving on, here's all cards. Here are all the cards that the builder has loaded for you to look at. Um, so there might be some stuff in here that might be worth looking at. So it's there for you to see. Disallowed, this is where all the cards go that you remove. You can restore them and it'll add them back into the calculations. Moving on to here, mana curve. So we have our mana curve here on what the average CMC of the deck is. I thought that it did a buy list, but I guess not. We'll have to see that in a little bit, but yeah. So yeah, you have your total price of the deck here, and then you have your buy list here, and this basically just includes everything that's not a land. If you were using a card pool, then it would exclude those from here, and you could copy that list from right here. And yeah, sometimes one bug is that cards like this will not get priced, and I'm working on figuring that out. Now, there's where most of that deck cost is coming from, so let's go ahead and remove that there. And you can see we're back down to 900. That looks good. All right, so let us go back to setup. I guess I did not put a limit there, so let's go ahead and put that $800 limit in there. Hit rebuild, and now our deck's down. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's all really that there is to the builder. I guess combos, yes. The combos, you can come here. You can see this little C next here. This means that it's a combo piece within the deck. And so you can look at the other combos here. So Spring Heart, that, and Lotus Cobra. You can click on it here, and it will say, oh, this is a spellbook combo. It looks like you need something with that there, so it's not 100% all the time, but it'll help you get close enough. You just have to make sure that some of these cards are also in here, so you can take advantage of those if you would like. Yeah, so moving on to the next part. I want to talk about pools. So in here you have this collection, and I plan to work on this a little bit more later. But basically the way that it works right now is you have this library. You can come here and you can say, hey, I have, I don't know, this card, wherever that card is, and it'll add it to your library. And so here, for example, are all the cards that I have in my personal binder. If I were to go and make a deck, I can say use my collection. I can also paste from a list or search cards. Let's load those into my card pool. And now you can really take advantage of some of the other benefits that this has whenever it's more like, hey, I'm playing in person or trying to manage stuff in balancing with like money, I guess. So the main reason that I built this was for this reason. So I can look at now all the legendary creatures that are in my pool, and these are just most of the cards I have in my binder, and it'll take like the top like X of them and do synergy lookups off of them, and it'll tell you like, hey, here are the decks that you could build based off of the cards that you have. So I can pick like UARC here, and then I can go through and just kind of leave that there, because that's how it's building it. So for this type of thing, I would just leave it there. If I don't necessarily have a deck idea in mind, hit that, show advanced options, and say, I only want to spend a total of $300 on this deck in order to build it. I'm going to use prefer cards I own, they count as free, and then I will hit build. And whenever I do this, what it'll do is it will basically make it so that I'll have to spend $300 to build this deck. So it'll give me, this type of color shortfall, and you can kind of manage that as you see fit. Again, this isn't going to give you 100%. The goal is not to give you 100%, it's to help you build it. Yeah, so cards to buy. 287 is how much I need to buy. Everything else is already in my binder. And you can go down here, and here's my buy list. I could take this, and I could go over to or to TCG player, drop that buy list in there, hit buy, and I now have this deck. So that's kind of the idea of Frantic Search. You can also go through here, look at what other people are building. Um, I want to add some more collection tracking things. You can also go here and look at your buy list, so like for individual decks, and then just dump them out and export them there. But yeah, so some of the stuff I'm working on are more community features. I do want to get more into the card purchasing integration, so it's a lot simpler to get from a idea into a deck list into ordering those cards on TCG Player or, or anywhere else. Um, Next thing would be faster iterations. So currently there are restrictions on how many uh, build pipelines can be active at once. This is a technical limitation on the server infrastructure. So I need to work on that. Later, I'd also like to add some auto goldfish things. So you could maybe goldfish a deck and say, I always want to be able to play my commander on an average game by turn 4, and then just have the deck go through and like do that and say, here's the pieces that you need to make sure that are in the deck so that you can have that consistent game plan. Final thing that's on the horizon would be basically adding simulated games in order to help you build your deck. So you could kind of make different versions of a deck and then sim each of them either against each other or against other decks and kind of get an idea of how that deck will perform, what turn will it win by, that kind of stuff. That's stuff that I think would be really at least just cool to make, and so I'm really wanting to make that. Um, so yeah, that's basically everything. If you all have any questions, just let me know. And yeah, thank you.